Chapter 3 The Love of God. Have I disappointed and disheartened you at the outset of our communion by touching and attempting to destroy one of your cherished idols? If so, and I have little doubt about it, let me ask you to bear it for the moment as best you may. I know something of the tenderness of the subject on which I have been constrained to speak, can understand how the heart sinks at the thought of relinquishing the hope I assert to be an illusion, but it is not the history of the past strewn with fragments of the erroneous ideas truth has compelled our ignorance to cast aside. The surgeon who drives his scalpel deep is not necessarily the enemy of our well-being, but rather our true, if painful, friend. It is the foreign and dangerous growth he removes that necessitates the operation he performs. So in our spiritual unfoldment, the foes to truth and health must needs to be cut away before we shall be allowed to tread the inner courts of the Father's house. I am not altogether unprepared for the angry exclamations and hard accusations that are ejaculated during the operation, but I also know that in the coming days you will discover that, in the language of a well-known hymn, the, quote, bitter is sweet, the medicine is food, end quote. And I can wait until that time to hear your calm and grateful opinion. If we but knew the beauty of the flower that hides potential in the uncouth seed, its shape, its perfume, and its brilliant glow, how should we prize it? But behold, we heed it not, we treat it with disdain, because we had imagined it would be exactly in the seed as in the flower, and we should now its richest perfection see, and we should now its rich perfection see. Not so, my child, 'tis but experienced eyes can trace in seed the flower we shall so prize. If eye hath not seen, how is it possible for us to conceive? The few who have hitherto returned have had so much to tell. I do not wonder at the prevalence of misconception, especially when I review my own experiences. But now that the true significance of the resurrection of Jesus is being so clearly understood and its ministry established, we shall gradually clear away these errors and make the truth of God known. Nor shall we do this by the force of anathemas, but rather by an appeal to reason. If you cannot accept our message, we shall follow the example of the Christ. Turn away. The future will decide the question of truth, and by that decision we shall all be acquainted or condemned to penalty. Nor would I have you misunderstand me when I speak of penalties. God's ways are higher than the ways of men, and the forfeitures he will exact will in every instance be those which are the just sequence of the offense. All sins and sinners do not merit the same punishment. Hence I make no threat of hell, because you may honestly doubt what I say. When the truth is made known to you by experience, you will then understand as I now understand. And if by reason or refusing to consider what I have here advanced, you have rejected it, you will have lost the help and assistance it had power to render, and find yourself so far behind where you had the opportunity to be, and the regret at what might have been will form the penalty paradise will exact. God is love, not revengeful. Let me throw this ray of brightness across the temporary disappointment of the truth I have declared. I will now proceed with my actual experiences. Having spoken of a hallucination which had been dispelled, I would fain recount what unanticipated joy came to me in its place. But how shall I accomplish my desire? The silver-tongued Isaiah, in the partial vision vouchsafed to him, could only exclaim, "Since the beginning of the world men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, what God hath prepared for him that waiteth for him." And Paul, who had been caught up to behold the glory when comparing the experiences of earth with the reward and reserve, declared, "Our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory." How then can I expect to paint or describe the more than fullness into which I entered? I had lost something. Yes, I had lost the shadow from the sunshine, the husk from the wheat, the thorn from the rose, the possibility of a discord in the music, the uncertainty lest a fear might linger in the bosom of the joy, the doubt whether the hurried holiness was perfect or partial, the wonder whether God was strictly just. All these I had lost completely and forever. Death shook the last vestige of every doubt and mystery concerning these away, and when the mental earthquake had spent itself, I opened my eyes upon a new heaven and a new earth in which dwelleth righteousness, righteousness established upon a basis of law, not dwarfed and fashioned to suit the limitations of man, while my own powers, conception, and understanding were all enlarged to comprehend something of the illimitable scheme as designed by God. I say something, but it was only a wee part of the magnificent, stupendous love, which in length and breadth and height reached far beyond my ken. But above, beneath, around, all was harmony, peace, and rest. I stood on the threshold of the eternal and shadowless calm. Far, far away within the awful depths of that profoundly divine solitude, my poor earth ideal of heaven had reached the Father's heart. Its clumsy model spoke eloquently to him of impotence. It was more rough to his conception than a savage effort to mold a deity, but it told of a heart's dear wish, of a great desire, yearning to be satisfied, of the heaven that would supply all the happiness I had power to conceive. Now for the wonder of my existence. He took my plan, the model I had built in the incompetence of my ignorance, and retaining its outline, love worked upon it. And from its imperfections prepared the rest into which he had given me entrance. It was my heaven, enlarged, completed, and furnished by the love of God, and just as it transcended all that I could ask or think, so must I fail to convey the overflowing fullness of joy which it inspired. It was more than this, for when he had so far enlarged my heaven, he afterwards so far extended the powers of my enjoyment that I might the more appreciate and enter into its glory. Was the gain greater than the loss? Yes, as God is greater than a man. So inexpressibly beyond my conception was the mansion of the soul into which I was welcomed. It gave to me three great desires of my heart: mother, home, and heaven, beyond all expectation. Companionship has much to do with the measure of happiness attained in paradise. When Mionine stood beside me on the roof of my new home, I was enchanted with the beauty of the scene, which lay unrolled before me. But gracious as he was, and tender with truly divine affection, the sense of his condition awed me until I felt something as Peter must have felt when he prayed the Lord to leave him. It was afterwards, when I stood or sat beside Sveon in those surroundings, that I entered into the full enjoyment of the sweet repose.